Hi, my name is Bente, I'm the Norse Witch, and today I thought we could talk about how magic works, because I realized I'm making content on witchcraft and magic and spirits and deities all the time, but I have never really done a video on how I personally believe all of this stuff even works. So, of course, a little disclaimer, this is not a fact, this has not been scientifically proven at all, and I doubt that it will ever be scientifically proven. This is just my personal belief and my attempt at explaining how I philosophically explain myself how magic works. So don't take this too seriously, this is just my belief. If you believe in something different, that is totally fine. We will probably never know who's correct, so we can all just make up our own minds. But I thought this could maybe inspire someone or help someone improve their spell work or their magical workings. So let's jump into it. To start things off, simply, everything is made up of energy. That's probably something all, or at least most of us, can kind of agree upon. Even if you're not an animist, you probably agree that everything is, in the end, made up of energy. So I am made up of energy, even though I look like I am a physical manifest being, and I am made up of matter. This matter I'm made up of is made of energy, and you are made of energy, and the camera I'm filming on is made of energy, my cats are made up of energy, and so are spirits and deities and everything around us, basically. That is our common ground, basically, that we are all made up of energy in some form or another. And that is also usually agreed upon, at least I see a lot of people defining magic this way. Magic is just manipulating all of this energy to achieve a specific goal. So, for example, if you want to cast a money spell because you need some cash, then you would just manipulate the energy around you so that in the end you are receiving some money in one way or another. And that can be done in various different ways, but in the end that is like the common ground of all kind of magical workings and spell work. And what I personally believe this manipulation of energy looks like is basically like an energetic push in some direction. It can be more or less directed, so it can be like an arrow, basically you shooting out an energetic arrow and it hitting the target exactly where you wanted it to. Or it could look more like a wave, you know, like if you throw a stone into water and waves are emanating off of where you put the stone in the water. It can also look like this. At least that is an image that I like to use whenever I try to visualize what spell work and what manipulating energy looks like when we're doing spell work. So it could either be very directed, so you are basically causing a push of energy in one very specific direction where you intended it to go, or you're basically pushing it out into all directions, so it causes a lot of changes. And this energy that we send out when, for example, we are casting a spell, it changes something. So if you have energy all around you and you send out a push of energy, where this energy goes, something will change. I personally just really like this image of waves and water, because if you, for example, you are in a swimming pool and you push water to one side, this will ripple on until it can't ripple on anymore. So it will create waves that will spread until it can't spread anymore, or until the energy is used up. And that is what I personally like to visualize it as. So you push out some energy while you're doing spell work, and this energy causes some kind of change, which in turn causes another change, and this causes another change and another change. I kind of see this as like a rippling effect. So it's not like you're sending energy in one direction, it hits the target, bam, that's it. Of course, that could be the case sometimes, but I feel like more often it's kind of a ripple effect where you affect some change that in turn affects something else, affects something else, affects something else. So you're kind of causing a chain of cause and effect. And actually, Sanre from the Order of Chaos put it into perfect words. I loved how he just worded it, and I don't remember it exactly, but he basically wrote that manipulating energy or working magic is like intentionally causing a butterfly effect. And if you know what the butterfly effect is, it is basically exactly that. It's a tiny little change that in turn affects another change, causes another change, until something very big happens. And I personally see it exactly that way. It's kind of a ripple effect, and it can become bigger, it can become smaller, it can change in various directions. So, of course, we need some way to say, like, I want it to go in this direction, exactly in this direction. I want the change that I'm causing to be more of a very specific, very targeted arrow shot, more than like a wave going in all directions. Because like if I want to affect exactly the change that I want, I don't want to change a ton of stuff around me where I don't need it. You know, I want to change exactly the one energy that I need to change. And that is where intention comes in. In my belief system, in my personal philosophical belief system, intention is what directs the energy. So if, for example, my intention is I want to gain money, then the energy will go into another direction than if I, for example, say I want to attract love into my life. It will just direct the energy where it needs to go. And you probably have already heard of the word intention, and you probably have already heard of the sentence, intention is everything. I personally don't believe intention is everything, because I believe you need both. You need energy because you want to affect this change, but you also need intention. The intention itself doesn't do anything if I don't put out energy with it. I don't believe the intention itself would do anything. You could argue, of course, that you are putting out energy all the time. If you're just thinking, you are putting out energy. If you are making tea, you are putting out energy. So you are causing change all the time, no matter what you do. That is true, and that is why I believe only setting an intention can change something, but I feel like it won't be as effective as if you put a lot of energy behind it. So for example, I believe you can manifest things just by putting an intention into your head and believing it, but it will be more so accidental, because if you only have the intention and you don't really put a lot of energy behind it, it will be like dropping a tiny little stone or like a feather into the water, you know? There will be tiny little waves, but they won't really spread a lot because there's not a lot of energy behind it. Whereas if you, for example, cast a full-on spell and you put a lot of energy behind it, then you're dropping a big stone in the water and causing a lot of waves, a lot of energy, a lot of changes. And that is why I personally also do not believe that thoughts that just randomly pop up in your head, for example, because you're an anxious person, will just manifest. There are people out there who say that you can't think negative thoughts, you can't have intrusive thoughts because they will manifest. I feel like that is very short-sighted. I feel like intrusive thoughts don't really have energy behind them. Maybe like a tiny bit, because yeah, you were thinking something, but you are not putting energy behind it. Of course, if you repeatedly think those things all the friggin' time and you are getting hung up on this thought, thinking it all the time, of course, the more you think it, the more energy is put behind it. And that is where like self-manifesting prophecies can come in, and like you just, for example, causing yourself to like feel very self-conscious, because you're telling yourself all the time that you are shit. But just because a random thought pops up in your head, I don't believe that will really cause change. Whereas if you are, for example, consciously thinking the intention all the friggin' time, for example, with affirmations that you repeat 10 times a day, for example, or if you are trying to manifest something and you are visualizing it very, very often, which some people do, then I feel like the more you do it, the more energy you put behind it, and the more effective it will be. That is basically how I believe it works. But yeah, if you, for example, do spell work and you put a lot of energy behind your spell, then you don't have to repeat it as often. Of course, if you repeat the spell over and over again, then it will be more and more energy and it will probably be more and more effective. Intention is not everything. That is where I wanted to go. Yes, that is why I think intention isn't everything. But if you combine intention and energy, you're not only causing some random changes, but you are sending these changes, these energy pushes into one specific direction. As I already said, this can be like an arrow shot, very specific, but it can also be very broad, like if you put a stone into water and it causes a lot of waves going in all directions. So this is why we want our intention to be pretty clear and precise, because then it will not look like a stone dropping in water and waves going everywhere. Especially if you're doing baneful work, you do not want the effect of the waves going everywhere, because then you are probably causing harm in a lot of places where you didn't intend to. So baneful work is definitely an area where you need to be extremely specific. But in general, the more specific you are in a specific area, I will go into that later, the more specific you are, the more specific your energy push will look like, and yeah, the more it will look like an arrow shooting into one specific direction, bull's eye. So instead of, for example, just saying, I want money, you could, for example, say, I want money from this specific source, or I want money without anyone being harmed by it, or I want money in this time frame. So the more specific you get, the better, but do not get too specific. Because if you think about, for example, getting money, if you get so specific that there is no wiggle room anymore, how is it supposed to take place? For example, if you say, I want money, but I want to find it on the street exactly on October 30th at 11 p.m. That is very, very specific. And I always imagine it as like, if you still have the image in your head of a stone dropping into water and waves emanating in all directions. The more specific you are with the intention, the more walls you put up around the stone. So that, for example, if you say, I want money, no walls, the waves will spread in every direction. If you say, for example, I want money and I want to get it from my shop. So I want money because I get a lot of orders. Then you put up some walls so that, for example, instead of the waves spreading in all directions, they will only spread in this direction, because in this direction you have built walls. So the energy is now spreading into one direction. It's still pretty broad, but it goes only in one direction. But the more specific you get, the more walls you put up. And at some point, you will only leave a tiny, tiny, tiny little hole in the wall. And the energy that can still go through this tiny little space in the wall is only a very tiny amount of energy that probably won't really do a lot of changes anymore. So you kind of have to find a good balance between being specific, but not being too specific with the intention. And I know that is kind of hard, but you just have to try it out and then you will see what works and what doesn't. But okay, that was everything I wanted to say about intention. Now let's get into the energy, because yes, you are causing change all the time, you are emanating energy all the time, but probably not as directed as you would like it to, or not as much as you would like it to. So there are some contexts in which we usually work with energy. So, for example, where do you want the energy for a spell, for example, to come from? You can use your own energy, you can use the energy of a spirit, a deity, an object, for example, a crystal or herbs or something. That's what a lot of people do. You can use the energy of a planet. You can use energy of an egregore, of a thought form. You can basically pull energy from everything, from anything that you could think of, and use that energy in spell work. The terms I personally use for those things are, if I work with my own energy and I am trying to collect a lot of energy and put it intentionally into my spell work, I'm thinking of that as raising energy, because I am raising my own energy level to then put it into something, or just to push it out into the universe. But for example, if I'm using the energy from something else, let's say from a planet, I'm using the energy of the full moon, for example, because I'm doing spell work on the full moon, then I am channeling that energy, because I'm not raising the energy of that planet, for example, because it's already there. I'm just channeling it into myself to then put it into, for example, the spell work. And you can do both of these things in so many different ways. And in my personal experience, finding a way to channel and raise energy that works for you is so incredibly important for effective spell work. If you, for example, because all of the books always talk about visualization, if you just believe I have to work with visualization, so even though I'm not really good at visualizing, I will do it with visualization all the time, it probably won't be as effective, because that's just not where your skill set lies. So for example, for me, it was so impactful to find out that visualizing is not my strong suit. I'm a feeling person, so I do most of the things I do by feeling them. But of course, you can visualize. So for example, if you want to raise your own energy, you can, for example, visualize an energy ball in your center, for example, or in your heart area, wherever it feels right. And for example, with every breath you take, you visualize it getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because you're basically collecting your energy in your core. So the energy ball is getting bigger and bigger until you can't really stand it no more, and then you will put it into the spell work. And we will get into that later. But instead of visualizing it, you can also feel it. That's what I personally do. I feel it physically, like I feel my energy level rising. So I do the same thing with the breathing. With every breath in, I will feel the energy getting more and more and more intense. You could also do it by feeling emotionally. So, for example, if you want a spell that attracts love, you can evoke this feeling of loving someone and being loved, and concentrate on that emotion and raise this emotion until it basically fills your entire body. If you're, for example, a water moon sign, like astrologically, this will probably be very easy for you, because if you're already a very emotional person, then raising those emotions will be pretty easy. But for other people, for example, for air signs, that won't be as easy. So just do whatever works for you. You can also, of course, raise energy by moving. So with any type of movement, it can be just swaying, and the swaying getting more and more intense. It can be dancing, it can be running around in a circle, whatever works for you. Of course, if you are moving, you are raising energy. You feel that by your heartbeat getting stronger, and you're starting to sweat, and you're getting hot. You're raising energy. So that's also a way that you can raise your own energy. And those are just some ways in which you can raise energy. There are a million ways, so feel free to get creative. If we're talking about channeling energy, I feel like this is a little bit more tricky. Of course, visualizing will be a standard way to do it. So for example, if you have an object, a crystal, for example, and you want to channel the energy of that object, you can take it into your hand and visualize the energies of that object going into your hand, into your body, and then mingling with your own energy. Or you could, if it's, for example, an object that you do not have with you physically, if it's, for example, a planet, you can visualize the planet and visualize either the energy just being drawn down and into your body, or you could imagine something like octopus arms reaching out to the object, attaching to it, and then sucking energy from it. There are a lot of ways in which you can visualize that. Again, whatever works for you. You can do the same thing by feeling, so I usually do it by feeling. You can also just do it by thinking. That usually will take more time and practice, but if you can easily go into an altered state of consciousness, then it is pretty easy to basically just tell yourself, like, I am vibrating with the energy of the moon. And the more you tell yourself that, the more you will automatically channel the energy of, for example, the moon. So that is also something you can do. And I just realized I forgot a very, very important way of raising your own energy. Breathwork. Breathwork is great. You can use breathwork in so many different ways, but one of the ways is to raise your own energy. All right, so now you have either raised your own energy or you have channeled the energy of something else into your own body. But now you have to put it somewhere. Of course, what you do with the energy will be different depending on what kind of working you do. So for example, if you are not using any physical objects, for example, you can just raise or channel the energy until you're full of it, and then just focus on pushing it out into the universe with your intention, so that it then will cause the change that you want. Extra points, for example, if you do that by chanting or by saying an incantation or something. So that is kind of a very basic way. If you're working with physical objects, for example, let's say you're using a candle, you can of course visualize the energy that you have stored in your body now, pushing it into the candle. You can feel it going through your arms and into the object. You can breathe on it. That's something that I always do, is when I have raised my own energy in my core, I am focusing on the energy leaving my body through my mouth with the breath, and I'm combining that with chanting something or saying some kind of incantation, and then I'm breathing that energy together with the intention into the object. Very, very effective. So yes, of course, there are also a million ways in which you can direct energy. These are just some examples. Again, find a way that works for you. Get creative. You do not have to use a specific technique from a book or from my video. Try things. Try specific things, new things, and things that work with your own skill set. But yes, that's basically what it is. Now you have raised or channeled a lot of energy, and you have fused it with your intention basically, and then you have put it out in some way into the universe to work its magic. And that is how I personally believe magic works. So yeah, I just really hope that this image of a stone being dropped in water and then the waves emanating off of it and you directing the waves with the intention walls you build up makes as much sense for you as it does for me. This image personally really helps me to understand how it works, or at least how I believe it works. If you see it differently, then please tell me your thoughts in the comments, because I feel like the belief in how magic works and how spells work and directing and channeling and raising energy works and stuff, everyone will probably believe something slightly different or drastically different, and I love talking about this topic. So feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss. Before I drop off, let me quickly shout out my lovely patrons. Thank you so much to Natasha, Anne, Kate, Cade, Thistle, Adam Z, Brawl, Kent, Kelly, Brittany, Emrys, Celine, Smolkata, Josh, Alinura, David, Kristany, Rixie Business, Valo, Annalena, Ashley, Erica, Kristen, John, Phoenix, Jenny, Maggie, Misty, Amy, Colette, Bethany, Timothy, Coffee, or the Honorary Gossip Squirrel, and last but not least, Bjorn. Thank you so much. Again, love you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe and give a thumbs up and ring the bell down below so you're notified whenever I upload a new video. Of course, you can check out all of my other socials and my shop for ethically and sustainably sourced witchcraft and paganism tools. And if you want to support me in another way, then of course you can check out my Patreon. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!